Hello, everyone. My presentation is called Trust Before Transaction, Business Communication in East Asian Cultures. Um, so, my name is Rufal Meru, and I've been a part of the Intro to Asian Culture course. Uh, and this is my video presentation. So for this project, I chose to focus on business and communication because communication in business is not only about exchanging information in Asia, right? It's also about building trust, showing respect, and understanding the expectations of the people you are working with. That's less so over in America rather than East Asian cultures. And in this presentation, I'll mainly focus on China, Japan, and South Korea. These countries are different from each other, but they also share some cultural influences that affect the professional communication and business uh, communication. My goal is not to say that everyone from these countries like acts the same way. Instead, I want to look at a common patterns that can help us better understand how business communication works in many East Asian contexts. So the main idea of my presentation is that in many East Asian business settings, trust and relationships often come before the actual transaction. In the United States, on the contrary, business communication is often very direct. People may want to get to the point quickly, discuss the deal, and move forward. There's a more hustle culture here. However, in many East Asian contexts, communication may begin with just understanding the relationship between the two companies first, right? People want to know who they're working with, whether the person is respectful, and whether they can be trusted over time. I'll start by explaining some cultural foundations like the Confucian values, hierarchy, harmony, and face. Then I'll look at examples from China, Japan, and South Korea. After that, I'll compare these patterns to common US business expectations. And then finally, I will give my own analysis of the benefits, risks, and modern changes happening to these cultures. The topic matters because certain behaviors can be misunderstood from a outside perspective, and like silence can like seem like confusion. Indirect language may seem unclear. Taking time to build trust may seem like an unnecessary delay in things happening, and in many cases, these behaviors are actually ways of showing respect and protecting the relationship. Before going deeper, I want to make something clear. East Asia is not just one culture. There's obviously China, Japan, and South Korea, and many more countries. So they have different histories, governments, economies, and business systems. So it'd be inaccurate to talk about them as if they're exactly the same, right? But at the same time, they still have some shared cultural influences, especially from Confucian thought. Confucian ideas have shaped their views about respect, social roles, self-discipline, family, education, and harmony. These values can still be influence professional behavior today, even though each country might express them differently. For example, China is often discussed through the idea of guanxi, or relationship networks. Japan is often connected with indirect communication and consensus building. South Korea shows the importance of hierarchy while also dealing with modern changes in the workplace. So the point of the presentation is not to create stereotypes. The point is to understand cultural patterns that may influence business communication in East Asia. A lot of business communication in East Asia makes more sense when we understand the values behind it. One major idea is hierarchy. In many professional settings, age, title, rank, and seniority matter. This affects who speaks first, how people disagree, and how decisions are made. Another important idea is harmony. Instead of openly creating conflict, people may try to keep the group balanced. This does not mean they don't have disagreements, but it means that disagreements may be expressed more carefully. The third idea is face. Face means reputation, dignity, and social respect. In businesses, people often try to protect both their own face and the face of others. So this is why a lot of times criticism isn't given directly or you don't disagree in public, and you try to do it in a more private setting. The last idea is reciprocity. Relationships are often built through trust, favors, obligation, and long term cooperation. In this kind of setting, communication is not only judged by clear it is, but it's also judged by whether it protects the relationship. So the key idea is that communication is not just about saying the right words, it's also about showing respect in the right way. So our first example, China. One important concept in China is guanxi. Guanxi is sometimes translated as connections or networking, but it's more meaningful than just knowing people. It refers to a system of relationships based on trust, repeated interaction, obligation, and mutual help. In business settings, guanxi can help reduce uncertainty. If two people do not know each other well, a contract might not be enough to create trust the right way. Building a relationship helps both sides feel more comfortable that the other person will follow through on the agreement. This is why business relationships in China may take time. Meetings, introductions, meals, and personal conversations can all be part of the business process. These moments help people understand whether someone is reliable and respectful. At the same time, guanxi has a complicated side. It can help create loyalty and long-term cooperation, but it can also create insider and outsider groups. People with strong connections may have advantages that others do not. It can also become ethically difficult if personal obligations start to matter more than fairness or transparency. So my main point is that guanxi can be powerful and useful, but it should be handled carefully. A good professional should build trust over time while still keeping clear ethical boundaries. So my next example is Japan. In Japanese business communication, meaning is not always only in the exact words that are being said. A person may communicate through tone, pauses, silence, or careful wording. This can be very different from the direct communication style that many Americans are used to. For example, if someone says, "That may be difficult," they may not simply mean that the task is challenging. In some situations, that phrase can be a polite way of saying no or warning that there is a serious problem with that project. So, if someone does not understand that, they might keep pushing without realizing the other person has already given a respectful refusal. Another important part of Japanese business culture is consensus building. In some companies, the formal meeting is not always where people openly argue or debate. A lot of real discussion may happen before the meeting. By the time everyone is in the room, the goal may be to confirm agreement rather than create public conflict. From an American perspective, this may seem slow, but from another perspective, it can prevent embarrassment, reduce tension, and make sure people are aligned before the final decision is made. So in Japanese business communication, it is important to listen carefully, not just to words, but also to context. My third and last example is South Korea. South Korea shows how traditional values and modern business expectations can exist at the same time. In many Korean workplaces, hierarchy is important. Senior leaders, managers, and junior employees may all have different communication expectations. Respecting seniority can affect how people speak, how they give feedback, and how they disagree. For example, a junior employee may avoid directly contradicting a senior manager in a public meeting. That does not mean the junior employee has no opinion. It may mean that they are expected to express that opinion in a more respectful or private way. However, South Korean workplaces are also changing. Younger workers, global companies, and technology industries often value faster feedback and more open communication. International business also pushes companies to become more flexible. This creates a tension between traditional hierarchy and modern workplace expectations. So, on one hand, respect and formality still matter, but on the other hand, innovation often requires people to speak up and share ideas quickly, especially in South Korea, which is more forefront in technology and pushing the edges of technology. This is why it is important not to think of culture as frozen. Culture changes over time, and business communication changes with it. So this slide compares common US business expectations with common East Asian business patterns. In many US workplaces, being direct is often seen as professional. People may be expected to state their opinion clearly, disagree openly, and move quickly once the facts are available. In many East Asian business settings, professionalism may look different. A person may avoid direct disagreement because they do not want to embarrass someone or damage the relationship. They may also show respect by considering rank, seniority, or group harmony. There's also a difference in how trust is understood. In the US, people may feel that the contract defines the relationship. In many East Asian contexts, the relationship supports the contract. In other words, the written agreement matters, but trust between people also matters a lot. Neither style is automatically better. Direct communication can be efficient, but it can also feel too aggressive. Indirect communication can preserve respect, but it can also create confusion if people do not understand the signals. The most important lesson is that people may have different definitions of what it means to be professional, especially in different cultures. Etiquette may seem a small part of business, but in many East Asian cultures, it can carry a lot of meaning. One example is the business card. In Japan, especially business cards are treated with care because they represent a person's professional identity. Giving and receiving a card with both hands shows respect. Greetings, titles, and seating arrangements can also matter. These details can show that a person understands hierarchy and is paying attention to social roles. Silence is another important example. In the US, silence can sometimes feel awkward, but in an East Asian business setting, silence may mean that someone is thinking carefully, trying to be polite, or avoiding direct confrontation. Gift giving can also be used to show goodwill, but it has to be done carefully. A gift should be modest and appropriate, and people also have to follow company rules so it does not create ethical problems. The main point is that etiquette is not just decoration. It's a way of making respect visible, especially before deeper trust has been built. Now, I want to take a step back and ask why do these communication patterns exist? One reason is risk reduction. Businesses always involve some level of uncertainty. If you do not fully know whether a partner is reliable, a strong relationship can help reduce that risk. Another reason is face protection. If someone is criticized directly in public, they may feel embarrassed and the relationship may become damaged. Indirect communication allows people to address problems while still preserving dignity. A third reason is social stability. Hierarchy gives people clear rules in formal settings. This can help people know how to behave and who is responsible for making decisions. These patterns have benefits. They can create loyalty, patience, long-term cooperation, and fewer public conflicts. But they also have risks. Decisions may take longer, people have to hide disagreements, connections may become more important than fairness. Junior employers may have useful ideas but feel uncomfortable speaking up. So my critical view is that we should not immediately judge these behaviors as good or bad, but question, what value is this behavior trying to protect? Is it protecting respect, harmony, trust, or stability? Once we understand that, we can communicate in a more thoughtful way. Globalization has changed business communication, but it's not erased the culture. Today, many East Asian companies work with international clients, use English in business, join multinational teams, and follow global business rules. Because of this, younger professionals or people in global industries may communicate in a more direct and flexible ways than older generations or from traditional companies. However, cultural patterns like respect for seniority, careful wording, relationship building, and attention to harmony can still be important. So the modern reality is more of a mix. A person may communicate one way in a local company, another way in a multinational company, and another way when working with international clients. This is why a good communicator should adapt to the situation instead of assuming every person follows the same traditional pattern. Based on this research, a respectful cross-cultural communication strategy should include preparation, patience, listening, classification, and adaptation. Before a meeting, it is important to learn people's titles, roles, and decision-making structure so you can show respect and avoid simple mistakes. It is also important to build trust instead of immediately pushing for a deal, because credibility can matter just as much as the actual business proposal. During communication, you should pay attention to tone, pauses, silence, and indirect signals because meaning is not always only in words. If something is unclear, you can politely summarize the agreement so details can be corrected without embarrassing anyone. Overall, cultural intelligence is not just memorizing rules. It's learning to notice what people are trying to protect, such as trust, respect, harmony, and long-term cooperation. To conclude, East Asian business communication is often about relationship management, not just information exchange. Across China, Japan, and South Korea, many professional behaviors make more sense when we understand ideas like trust, hierarchy, harmony, based in long-term relationships. China shows the importance of guanxi and relational trust. Japan shows the importance of indirect communication and consensus. South Korea shows the importance of hierarchy while also showing how modern workplaces are changing. My main critical point is that these patterns are meaningful, but they are not universal rules. It would be wrong to stereotype people or assume everyone communicates the same way. At the same time, it would also be wrong to ignore cultural completely. The best approach is to be respectful, observant, and flexible. Overall, this topic shows that in business, a message is not only what it is said, it's also how respect is shown, how trust is built, and how relationships are protected. Thank you. The final slide shows the sources I used for my research. I used academic articles, professional sources, and cultural communication materials to support the examples and analysis throughout the presentation. I appreciate you listening to my presentation and have a good day.